Now we're in the phase 2. Yes.
So I think we have quorum, right? I think that's everybody who will show up.
Before we start, so 2 questions. We had a discussion over email about the API idea, API request, and API suggestion. Nobody seemed to be pushing back what people think about the name. Votes, please.
API suggestion, fine with me.
API suggestion, Imo, your favorite?
I like both. Request, what was the other one?
Suggestion. An idea. You don't like idea.
I didn't like idea because it's like random as guess. Right? I think I want something that is a bit more structured.
I mean, suggestion sounded about as like.
Suggestion.
Okay, Stephen, anything from you?
I'm fine with suggestion.
Okay, suggestion it is. Thank you.
So that's just basically a new tag being added now, and that's where it starts.
Yep.
And then when somebody starts working through it, they put it on.
And as I listed, I'm gonna clean up the up for grabs and probably even close some of those that are there sitting for 1 or 2 years with 1 or 2 votes, which is like, yeah, nobody's interested. We're not gonna do it. Why to sit on it? We can reopen later.
Yep.
All right. Next question. We're gonna record today's session at least 1 hour, and you know, if there's nothing bad, we're gonna publish it as an example how we do API reviews for people. Everyone is okay with that?
We started already?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So it's part of that. By the way, at 10:30 we have.
After I don't mind. I think the consent is recorded.
We can cut it. Don't worry about it. At 10:30 we're gonna have Ati coming in because there are like 3 reflection issues, and I don't think that we're gonna pull them up ourselves. So.
Yeah, there's no cutting. All right. So let me actually present the screen. That would probably be helpful. All right. So these are all the ones ready for review. So that's, I think, the list we should go over because we haven't done this in a long time. Probably we should do all this first just for giggles. So what about this one here? Let's start with these guys here.
What do you plan to do about the disposable?
Well, some of these are much more expensive than others. Would it make sense to do some of the quicker ones first?
No, we have 2 hours. Let's go top to bottom and then just skip the one.
Actually, most of them, I checked them yesterday, most of them seem to be pretty simple or simple-ish.
Yeah. All right, so let's go with this one.
Okay, so I can explain this one. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so cancellation token registration is what you get back when you call CancellationToken.Register. It's a struct that represents the registration. You call dispose on it, and it removes the registration. And so typically you register something, you do the body of work that you would want to be cancelable, and then when you're done with that, you call dispose on it. Easy enough, you know, whatever. The issue is that if the callback associated with the cancellation token.register is currently running when you call dispose, then dispose waits for it to finish. And the reason for that is you want to know that when dispose has returned, in general, you want to know that either the callback has already run or will never run, such that you can clean up or do what you want with any of the state associated with that callback. If it was possible, the callback could still be running or run at some point in the future after you call dispose, then you don't know whether you can touch the state associated with that callback. So that's sort of the 90% case. However, there is the 10% case where there's some sort of interaction between the callback and the thread calling dispose, such that if dispose were to wait on that callback, you could deadlock. There have been a few cases, I think, in ASP.NET of this. We actually even have a case where we had to work around this, which I just discovered the other day in our WinRT async support. We explicitly avoid the dispose call and access internal methods in order to avoid a deadlock that can occur because of the kind of UI and synchronization context issues. So basically, this proposal is just adding an API to cancellation token registration that allows you to call dispose without waiting. So for those, it's cancellation token registration still implements iDisposable. The dispose implementation doesn't change. We're just adding another method that you can call separately on it if you want to ensure that you don't do that wait.
So basically, we would leave the existing dispose to still wait, and then we have another one that basically doesn't wait.
Correct.
I see.
How does it complicate implementation of those cancellation tokens when you said that typically you want to wait that on the fact that no one is running and
this has zero impact on existing usage. What it would mean if you
I mean new patterns, right?
Oh, so basically, today you use these in generally one of two ways. Either you say, either your usage is very scoped, in which case you just say using CancellationToken.Register, such that at the end of that using block, the registration will be undone. Or you have a field of a cancellation token registration on some structure or on some class, and you register and you store the registration into that. And then at some point later, often some other piece of code, when the operation has completed, you call dispose on that cancellation token registration. So in terms of usage patterns, in that latter case, it's literally just adding a few more characters. Instead of calling field.dispose, you call field.dispose without waiting. In the first case, you can no longer use a using block. So instead of saying use cancellation token.register, you would say var registration equals cancellation token.register, try finally. And in the finally, you would call dispose without waiting instead of dispose. So basically manually expanding the using block into a try finally. If you cared about this case.
And if somebody has it in a using, so they're going to call the current dispose and they call this new method, the dispose does nothing?
Dispose tracks whether it's been called, and it tracks it on the cancellation token source, which is a class. So it's effectively idempotent, and calling it more than once is a no-op, even with the existing one.
So calling dispose without waiting as a thing that you might do in the middle of a using statement or manual try finally will cause the later call to dispose to also not wait because it knows it's already disposed.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I think there's nothing wrong with that API. Like I feel like there's this general problem that we have in other areas already in the BCL where we kind of want to have the semantics of dispose essentially logically blocking without actually blocking to avoid the deadlocks. I mean, we had this in the WinRT case where we wanted to basically flush the buffers in dispose if necessary, but they only had flush async, so we couldn't really flush the buffers synchronously without basically doing a blocking operation, and that always had some, bad taste in terms of like how we deal with that. And it seems to be like another variant of that kind of problem where there's really not a good semantic with the existing dispose pattern. And I think we talked about this before to add to something like dispose async.
Right. So that is another option here. If we had async disposable, we could have cancellation token registration implement async disposable as well, and then you could choose to call dispose async instead, and it would return a task or a value task that would complete. Most of 99.999% of the time, it would complete synchronously. But in these rare cases, you would get a task that would complete when it eventually completed. That's also a viable path. I don't have anything wrong with that.
Yeah, like, I mean, if we would go down that path, I mean, then, like, should we, instead of adding this API as proposed, should we add basically public value task? Well, even if it's not even value task, right? It would just be task, right? Because there's no value task that is non-generic.
It would be just a task. You're right.
So should we just do that? Like, can they actually do the await? Do they even care?
It's a good question.
Because on their side, like, I just tried to look at their workaround, but it's like 500 lines of code, so I didn't quite see what they were doing. But I mean, if we would just do a public task, dispose async, I mean, they're not obligated to wait, right? They just kick it off and then be done with it too, right? So it wouldn't really be.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that's probably a reasonable approach. My only hesitation would be on implementation. I'd have to look at the implementation to see whether there'd be any significant impact to it. Off the top of my head, I don't think there would be. I think we could make it fairly pay for play. But I think that's a pretty reasonable alternative. I'm actually currently in the process of writing up notes for proposals around IAsync disposable and IAsync enumerable and stuff like that for discussion in C# language design.
We should do that. I mean, like the problem we had in the past was like, what do we do with using, basically? I mean, it seems clear that we would like to have using support for that sort of scenario. It's just a question of what the specifics would be, what happens to existing code.
Okay, so why don't we put a pin in it and just make a note that if we do an IAsync disposable, it would be better off with that. If we don't, I think we're fine. Other than we could decide on name. We could go with this one. But I agree that an async disposable seems reasonable unless someone can think of something that would be problematic there.
I would rename it to dispose async too. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could also just do dispose async regardless of whether there's an async disposable. And then if we add an IAsync disposable later, we could just make it work.
That's going to be my next suggestion. Yeah. The only thing is we've got to make sure we get the signature matching.
Yeah, I think honestly, like task dispose async seems a fairly reasonable pattern.
We're going to do the value task or something though.
Well, I mean, there's no value task, but
unless there was a need to return a value, I don't think we would need value task. And even if the signature differed, we could always implement it explicitly,
right,
and then delegate.
Yeah.
All right. I think, labels still apply. You talked about it. All right.
So come again. So it will come back with a new proposal, or sorry, I missed the.
No, like basically, it seems proposal to put a pin in it for now, and we bring it up to LEM to see what we want to do with that, and then we will either do a one-off there, or we just follow the pattern or whatever.
So switching API needs more work again.
Well, it already is marked as needs more work.
I thought it's API free. Don't worry about it. I'm changing it.
Yeah. All right.
Right done.
Right. Static property regex default regex match timer to configure default timers globally. Yes, I remember that.
Yep.
We don't have a static method for it.
There's no static property for that. For some reason, we didn't add it. So I mean, this would basically just map to the app domain thing, probably in implementation to have it consistent, but.
So there's no reason why we can't make app domain, current domain set data work as well. I mean, we should have a strongly typed way, but
no, I mean, the thing is, this already works today.
No, it doesn't.
Or it doesn't.
Oh, in core it doesn't.
Previously,
Because we don't have app domain. Yeah,
it needs out a set of the data blob that was never done, if I remember right.
Yeah.
We don't have set data at all.
We do have it, but it doesn't do anything.
But there's nothing that in the framework that we're ever using it.
We don't have get data anywhere.
Oh,
So
I see.
we should fix that. That's just a bug, but it does seem like it'd be useful to have the API as well.
Yeah, I think having a static API makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Probably fast and bright issue for bringing the set data back on that.
In desktop, when would that get read? Just at the start of the app domain, or I guess
Not sure.
No, you're setting it after the app domain started, haven't you? I'm just wondering if the code can handle it getting changed afterwards.
Well, you have the static, right? So you can change the static as well.
Well, I'm just saying the implementation we're going to use, can it handle changing what happens if I'm already running a regex? But
Well,
dumb question because
generally the data is read once only, the app domain
I see.
data.
So I guess that's then it was a good question, because now we're implying that you can set it at any number of times.
Yeah, because before, essentially, you probably would have just had to have read it before waking up the regex class.
Right, which is kind of lame. So I don't know what the implementation of this is. It's probably fine that we could handle it changing, but
I mean,
yeah, I mean, you're just going to initialize it when you create your regex object, and then you grab the default, and that's what you set the timeout to.
Like in general, I am very weary of ever having statics like this public, because it means that you can pick up any library code, and now all of a sudden you're behaving very differently and have no idea why. Doing things in app config or things that have to be loaded before the class initializes, they're at least stable for the lifetime of the program. So I mean, like it's back to the evils of C and global variables and calling other functions.
on the other hand, this would at least give the library some opportunity to choose, whereas previously it wouldn't.
But if a library cares about what its timeout is, it should just set it on every object.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with making this a gettable one too, so the user can retrieve it and understand.
Well, I think part of the reason for the timeout in the first place was because libraries didn't do it, right? So the idea is that when I use a library on my ASP.NET server, I want to make sure they all have a timeout that is sensible, because I don't control the library code. So it's more for the application manual. Sure, but like I may not be the one that constructs the regex.
Right, and changing this, I don't think, would restrict anybody who had a manual timeout already applied.
Sure.
So you're not controlling everyone. You're
Sure. I mean, yeah, this is not the case. I mean, if somebody specifies a timeout, I think it's fine.
What about if you made it a set once regex static?
What was the problem with this proposal? Like, I mean, it's like when the regex object gets created, they get it from the static thing, and then if the static thing changes after the regex object was constructed, too bad. But like you still basically set this value many times, but you only have to make sure that you do it before the regex object gets created.
Well, if I understand right, the problem is that if libraries set this, they get loaded, and then the application code isn't constantly defensively setting it back. They're going to get a surprise.
Library can now affect other libraries.
Yeah. Right. Whereas if you make it set once, then the application has the chance to win.
Well, generally, if libraries shouldn't be setting this, they should only be setting it in their localized regex.
The problem is, like, there's certain APIs we have where if the library controls it, it's just bad programming library parts. For example, if you set current directory in half your library code, like you're probably a douchebag to begin with, but like there's nothing that the app can do in that case. It's just a really badly written library.
Also, we can be sure no libraries are setting it today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, being cautious of the pattern of exposing global control values like we have with HCP for the callback stuff. We have, like, in general, I feel that it just leads to problems. If we do it where we bind it and it's either default or one-shot assignment, then that's at least more predictable. Then if two different libraries try setting it, like one of them's going to blow up, and like, well, don't do that.
Well, set once has this unfortunate side effect that you have to talk about what happens when you're the second guy. Blowing up is not great. Ignoring it also is not great. Yeah.
I guess my position would be cautious.
Sure, but like, I mean, like in terms of actionable items, what do we do? Because we don't have config. So like
No,
this thing doesn't exist.
It's very easy for us to do the set domain thing and read the value from the app domain and get it in core now.
And then it would go back to whatever guarantees we make in core or in framework, which presumably has to be set before you initialize the regex class. So essentially, it goes back to main. If main didn't do it, no one did.
So that's not.
Sorry, I'm confused. So like, you basically said this would be a property that would read its value from here, or?
Well, it's an internal property, not a public property. We initialize it from the app domain in the static constructor of regex, which is first time you access.
Okay.
So we make app_domain.currentDomain.setData work. We make the regex class read from that value, and we don't add this property.
Which means that you as a user, as an application, including ASP.NET, have to get to execute your code and call the set before anything else, any library, including ASP.NET, uses any regex.
So essentially, if main doesn't do it, no one does. which is the same guarantee we have right now in .NET
Are
Framework.
there enough control main in an ASP.NET application?
ASP.NET application can pass these flags to the abdomen as part of hosting.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Do they have it in ASP.NET Core as well?
There's definitely a hosting level. I'm not entirely sure where they're.
Well, do they have this supported? Like if we create our part and they don't match?
So today in Core we have the runtime config, which you just get put into this data bag, so you can set any property you want as part of your app.
I mean, presumably this must all work today, right? And when you set it in the config file, they're calling set data.
Well, that's ASP.NET. I'm not sure if it's ASP.NET Core, right? That's the difference.
So I think in Core they have a better option, a better chance of getting it set before regex than we do in full.
Let's, I would go with the set data and let's verify the end-to-end with ASP.NET Core context.
What does set data do when you call it twice on the same value?
It's just a dictionary, like it just puts something else in the dictionary. I don't think there's any notifications or anything fired behind it.
No, but like, I mean, the question is who wins, first one or last one?
Set data, the last one.
Last one, but that's what that's on. So how is it different from a regular property then?
because once the regex class has finished its type or its
it's a more predictable set once pattern.
It's done.
So a getter on the regex would be uncontroversial, right?
No, like I still don't understand like which part of regex, the regex type or the regex instance?
Regex type. It's a static constructor on regex.
So the static constructor, they basically snatch the value out of it. So the first time you access regex, it's done.
Yeah, so you have to beat the CC tor. So you have to be main. Which is what we have right now in NetFX.
Do you have those guarantees about static constructors?
Yeah, I'm not sure like we're solving the problem with that.
Try to eagerly run them.
Now you have to basically now you make a like one of the nice things or the problems I guess with ASP.NET is that like basically that means you can only really reliably set this value outside of managed code. As soon as you're running any managed code, you may be screwed.
But that's why ASP.NET has a config.
On desktop they do, yes. On core the pattern is you write it in code. Most of the time.
Domain set data would not let you set a name, a value that's already set.
Oh, so it's one.
So you only get one chance to set regex.
Does it mean it blows up or it just ignores it?
Throws invalid operation exception. Set data only once.
Good.
Interesting.
I mean, again, like pretty much it's you're setting this when creating the app domain, or you're setting it in main to modify the current one. And once code starts running, you don't really expect these things to change.
Yeah. So basically, there's work on our side to make this work today because it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then the second portion is we could just leave it at that.
After validating that it's really doable in ASP.NET Core.
Yeah.
Which likely it is.
Yeah, we can see whether that works. I wouldn't be terribly shocked if it actually doesn't work.
In ASP.NET Core?
Yeah, because basically all you need to do is like if you do any sort of reflection and that requires the type to be loaded, you're screwed before your code runs.
Well, but CC tors now only fire when you access stuff. Like talking about the type isn't enough. You have to use it.
Just saying when I do type of regex.getMembers, I don't cause the type constructor to run.
I believe that is something that changed in .NET Framework 4.
Can you confirm that, Eddie?
Because I remember working. So
I would be surprised if it didn't actually.
There was I think it was NetFX 4. We were depending on a static, or the order of static initializers, and they changed in 4 until you access the first static field or initialize the first object.
Yeah, the question is what classifies as access, right?
I believe reflection did not count, which I think is the thing that we were depending on having counted.
Yeah. Definitely desirable. All right, so then let's make a decision on this one. Let's just go with no for now, and then see what happens from there.
Yeah, let's basically make it work the same as desktop for now.
So,
yeah. So MSDN says it is called to initialize the class before the first instance is created or any static members are referenced.
MSDN of what?
Static constructor.
Oh, and there's a question if ASP.NET Core provides you a way how to execute your code before initializing any, or before doing any stuff, any loading, using many classes and that stuff, right?
It's like if they run.
Basically, you're telling ASP.NET on that code path, before you call the first, you cannot use any regex. It should be fine, but.
Or they'll need to have taken config and applied it to regex before they instantiated it. And that is best for that.
Actually, yeah, we leave it on.
Test it's not real.
That's a very good point. Having actually that tested in ASP.NET Core directly would be.
So how do we want to track this? Should I close this issue then and file a secondary issue for the set data thing, or should we just remove the API ready for review and just decline the API essentially?
Well, we should fix the set data.
Yes, but there's two issues, right? There's basically fix that data and add an API on regex. You want to reject the latter but not the former, right? But this issue is both.
You can reuse this, just take the tag off.
I would reuse because there's some history, and stuff.
Yeah,
and we might come back that that doesn't work from certain reasons, and we might want to repurpose this. So,
right. That's the way we do it. So there's no more any API tag on it. No, it looks like a regular bug. All right, new math API. Oh, for fuck's sake! I think we reviewed this before, no? Didn't we?
Yeah, we want to jump to the add
yeah, we want to do the reflection thingies. We have 3.
I don't know. I opened 30 tabs.
I know. I saw you. Yep. Ate actually has it
This
assigned
is
to
the most
himself.
complex one, so I don't know if you want to jump on the other two.
Well, they have 2 hours, so we can just walk them in order, and then we get as far as we get.
Okay.
There is no simple reflection issues, I think.
Okay. Well, there is a scale. Okay. All right.
Oh, I think we talked about that, didn't we? This looks very familiar.
I don't think there were many comments on that one. Are there?
No, I'm pretty sure we looked at this one. I wonder.
Oh yeah, this one.
Oh shit! Yeah, there is.
It's a.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. No, I remember commenting on this. Yeah, we talked with Christoph on that one.
Right.
Christoph didn't like what we did. Still don't entirely understand what his pushback was.
Well, the proposal has been completely reshaped, so.
Where is the latest proposal?
On the
In
top,
the top? Yeah.
on the top, yeah.
Why is it so long?
Like I said, this is the most complicated one out of the 3.
So when I remember correctly, the quick summary is we effectively want to retrieve a method that itself is generic on a potentially generic or non-generic type.
Right.
And there's no API that allows us to do that without basically going through 3 API calls, right?
Yeah. We can't disambiguate in those cases.
Right. And so I think I want to say the original proposal had kind of like something like this, no?
There,
or we had like
the original proposal passed in a set of types to instantiate the generic method over, and then it would instantiate the generic method sort of virtually, and then use that as the kind of candidate set to the original API. That's this.
Right.
We backed off, and we've backed off that idea completely.
So what would that mean? So basically, when you say get method now, what do you get back? You get basically get an uninstantiated generic back, correct?
Yes. This works like the classic get method, except that there's a new pivot, which is a generic arity,
which is the number of parameters.
Number of generic parameters.
But you could have get foo of t where t is struct and get foo of t where t is class. No, you're not allowed to differ only by constraint.
That's right.
Okay.
So is it in the case of if it's on generic class as well, is it generic arity of the one that you see in C# or the real one? Because it ends up
only the number of parameters introduced by the method declaration.
Yeah.
So the generic arity
in C#, not in IL, because in IL it's added together, right?
Well, no, I think what we're talking about here is
you're talking about inner classes for nested types versus.
It doesn't apply to generic methods.
No. There's no such thing as a nested generic method.
Because in metadata they're basically
You're right.
Backtick 1 and backtick 1.
Yes.
Right? Backtick 1 is for type names, and then backtick 1 is for method names.
They're completely different index spaces.
Yeah. So in a sense, what you supply here is how many, like what's the number behind the two backticks essentially.
Yeah.
And so you cannot overload because it's part of the name, essentially.
Even though that's a compiler thing and not a.
It's not actually part of the name, but it is part of the method signature that's used for disambiguation. We don't actually mangle the name for methods.
I would like to see a test for that.
So there's, without having the language back in front of me, there's no place where two methods can have compatible looking parameter signatures and also the same generic arity?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come again?
You can't overload on constraints, like I said.
Yeah. That's true. Let's see. You can class.
So what would that mean? So what we return back, the user still has to essentially make it like instantiate the generic method before they can actually do like get value or
assuming he wants to.
Yes.
Yes.
And 0 means not generic.
Yeah.
So logically, the existing ones would call to this guy with 0 essentially.
Well, he would call it with the any value, which isn't public. So they'd funnel to a common worker that would take something like -1 means any, means the don't care value and everything else. But yeah, that's implementation.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
So like currently in Reflection, you literally have to say get methods and do everything yourself correctly.
Yeah.
And so basically, this is why what would we throw from this guy?
I guess throw in. That's just the abstract method on the abstract.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it has to be implemented by the concrete implementation.
Is arity a term we've used before? Is it in the C# spec? I don't see it in any of the other APIs.
Well, it is. It's kind of a general language term, but I don't know if there's a overriding precedent. If there is, I mean, that's fine. But
I don't know how we call it in Reflection, but I think usually we say a number of generic types or something. Generic
parameter count would be acceptable too.
Yeah, I mean, because arity isn't in the Reflection APIs already.
So like
if arity is too nerdy, then we can rename it. That's fine.
Yeah, generic parameter count is what
I called Christoph. He wants
metadata.
Okay.
2 minutes.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
So both Roslyn and CCI exposed this thing as arity today, but I mean, to me, it's more about consistency. Yeah. If we don't use arity today in Reflection, we should probably just stick to the other one.
So searching for generic arity, looks like there may be an exception we throw during a generic bind in Reflection, that the number of generic arguments provided doesn't equal the arity of the generic type definition. So if we're already doing it in exception text, then
well, system reflection metadata, method signature, generic parameter count.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Yeah.
You should probably just call it generic.
That's fine.
Parameter count.
We're recording it today, by the way. We plan to publish it, just FYI. Oh, you're okay with that, right?
Well, it was supposed to be a triage.
To temper your language.
It was recorded
Yes,
triage.
we're recording a triage.
Yeah, be nice.
All right.
So this time, don't make jokes about Miguel like you did last time. Do you remember this issue?
No.
So we had this reflection proposal where the idea is you can get a method that is generic without looking for it yourself. That was the issue you felt very strongly last time that we shouldn't add it. And I'm trying to page in what the argument was. And the problem is that this write-up here is pretty long. But in a sense, like option A is we expose methods like this.
These are it's not option A and option B. They're both being proposed together, and the person who asked for this needs them both for this to be useful.
Okay, that's incorrect. So there's basically two parts. So the first part is we add these overloads here, which basically do not instantiate the generic. They just allow you to find it without you basically filtering the methods yourself. So you basically specify how many arguments it can take, and then you just do the normal binding to the parameters. And then this is the implementation of our reflection model. And then I guess the second one is.
So you want to create T3?
Yeah.
So I have a question about the genericity and the type array. Isn't the length of the type array the genericity?
No, that's the number of parameters, argument parameters.
You mean like a formal parameters to the method, not type parameters.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is not genericity.
So it is.
So how are we? We already have those four methods without the int genericity.
So let's look at this here.
You're looking for the foo that takes 3 generic type parameters and takes an object, a string, and an int. And a bool, because let's not use the same number for both of these. Right. So it has 4 formal parameters and 3 generic parameters. So it's the count of generic parameters, comma, the types of
Okay. I understand.
Yeah, so the first move, 2 parameters, arity of 0. Second one, arity of 1, still 2 parameters.
Generic.
Yeah, yes, fair enough.
My key understanding is that like the four methods, we already have them, except that it doesn't have the second argument, the generic arity. So we're just adding yet another dimension, like, all those 4 are with or without the generic arity.
And so I kind of vaguely remember now as discussing the issue. And I remember we just talked about, we asked the person who's submitted the proposal to show, like, what is the code that you would have to write if we don't provide all of these APIs. So it was not like pushback in the sense that we should not do this API. It was more like, since the API is a bit, adds complexity, does it help a lot? Or you can just open code to get the same behavior.
Yeah, if you want to get the exact same behavior as kind of the API with all of its legacy behavior, that's a lot of code, because these APIs do have a lot of policy in them, which is unfortunate, but that's what it is.
Yeah, so that was the question, like how, when you say a lot of code, is it, it's 10 lines of code, or it's 200 lines of code? Because if it's 200, then we probably should add the API. If it's 10, then we can kind of say, how many people want to use this API. If it's just few people, then maybe it's
I think there's a completeness argument you made here, because GetMethod, GetMethod was kind of designed before we had generics. So it lets you specify all the things that ECMA says disambiguate method signatures, except this one piece, which was introduced when we introduced generics. So it is a glaring gap. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think the original proposal also instantiated the generic and allowed you to pass in the type arguments, right? And so this one no longer does it. It's sort of a 2-step thing. So it's consistent with what GetMethod does today, except you don't have to handle the generics manually, which I would argue seems pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, if the C#2 and beyond spec says that it's all of the formal parameters plus the count of generic parameters that disambiguates the method, then I think that this is just missing from reflection.
So the behavior today is when you call GetMethod without specifying the generic arity, we only bind to non-generics.
No. We ignore the generic arity when we're selecting. So it's basically you're passing in a don't care.
Oh, I see. So there's a difference between calling these methods with an arity of 0 versus calling the existing ones.
Right.
So the existing ones would actually be an ambiguous match then, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So if you have two things that differ only by arity, and you call the current with the current don't care,
right?
Does it fail or does it return the first one?
Let's see. Returns. I think it throws an ambiguous match exception.
Okay.
Yeah. So you said that it's a lot of lines of code, and I now remember even more. We were discussing like, can you just call get methods and
Yes.
do the arity check yourself and the type match yourself?
Well, yes, but then you also have to do everything else. So you now have to deal with like the binder. You have to deal with parameter modifiers. You have to deal with the calling convention. So that's probably. I mean, I think 200 lines of code is probably not a stretch if you apply all of that.
Plus, I would play the card that like it's a gap, like that's
yeah. If we had a get methods that took the binder and the calling conventions and the type array and the parameter modifiers, then you're just filtering a list of 3.
Yeah, I'm just kind of rehashing what I start remembering that we discussed last time.
Right.
Because if Ari says that it's 200 lines of code or more, then sure, we should just add
I think it's 138. Yes. And if Herman writes it, it's 75, but then you have 0 white space in between. I know, right?
In this case. So if we didn't have any problems of updating, a type that's in net standard, well, essentially a type that's in net standard, I would say yes, this is just obviously missing. I'll defer to the complexities of updating type.
It's very simple. Shipping the update everywhere is simple.
We've already updated type several times.
Yeah, we've added a lot of APIs in the course. There's nothing new here.
yeah, actually on string and everywhere, right?
It's just going to have to take time to get everywhere. It's like everything else.
It's on the corner.
So then what's the second part here? Like I'm not quite making the connection between the first one.
Okay. It's if you scroll down a little bit, maybe
We had the code usage.
I had a code usage. I had a motivation. So
The little right below that.
maybe at the top. Scroll back up to the top. I had the motivation there.
The next thing.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold on. Right. Scroll one more time, and then. All right. That paragraph number 2. No easy way to specify generic. That's the motivation.
I see.
So you can't, when trying to pass the thing, it says in this, I'm looking for a thing with a generic arity or parameter count, whatever we would call it, of 2, and the second type is T2. You can't make a T2. Apparently.
It's type representing the generic variable, basically.
Yeah.
You need to get the.
Don't we have something like that? Or
We do, but the only way to get it is to have the method that you're looking for already in hand.
I mean, for example, on classes.
Sorry?
When I do instantiations and like create hierarchy, can I create like generic argument, as type? Because you can do like inherit from list of T and say like I'm hello T, right?
Oh yeah. You can get that, but
Or
this is
hello
about
array of T.
But this is about getting a reference to the generic parameter defined by the method, and the only path you have to getting your hands on one of those is to have the method info for the generic parameter, which is the thing you're looking for in the first place.
So in our current reflection APIs,
I see.
if you have a generic method foo that takes one
Right.
generic argument and a generic method bar that takes one argument, is the unresolved generic method info, are those two types the same? Are they equal? Are they both method 1 parameter?
Hold on, okay.
And I guess the question is, does the type info of an unresolved generic type, does that know who owns the generic type? So does it track if the method foo owns it versus the method bar, or are they all just, I'm a positional type?
No, right. Yes. That's precisely the problem. The generic parameter type actually has the declaring method or the declaring type as part one of its properties. It is bound, yes. That's exactly the problem.
But only in reflection.
So
only in reflection.
So
yes.
we would need to be,
theoretically, in order to make this work, we would need to add support for an unbound positional
right.
generic, and then plug
That's
that
right.
through the
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
It's basically a number.
Yeah.
Plus a Boolean saying whether you're a method or type parameter.
The only question I have is about the naming.
Okay.
So do we have something similar for classes?
No, we don't.
So we don't need ever, if I make instantiation or something like that.
Makes generic type. Makes this closest thing out to this.
But that's instantiation directly, right? But that's a question if I have to ever pass class generic variable type.
Right.
In Perl, we don't have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the way you do it, you just look for list of.
Yeah, you have to find it by getting the type and asking what are your generic
And the
parameters.
type you can talk about by saying type of T bracket, and now you can ask its method.
Right.
The problem with the method is it's circular.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also with types, you don't have the problems calling conventions,
Yeah.
binders,
Yeah.
formal parameters, generic parameters. Like it's so much simpler.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the proposal B is adding an API to get a positional generic type,
Yes.
or positional unbound generic type,
Yeah.
and then to make the binder
Make those methods
work.
Those APIs
Yeah.
accept them.
But if I call this method and I say, let's say I assign this to T1 and then I say T1 dot declaring method, it would be null, I suppose, right?
I'm sorry.
So when
declaring method would actually throw.
because this is basically just synthesize essentially a positional reference that
Yes.
you only ever need to call these guys here.
Right. Down below I go through the exact list of things I propose to support on these signature types.
So you say type of 4, then you say, okay, give me one for 1, give me one for 1 and for 0, and then you just say get method. You pass in the T, and then the U.
A U array.
Make array type. Yes.
Yeah.
I see. That makes sense.
Sounds good.
And so scroll to see what.
You want the signature in there?
Well, it's not officially part of the type. That's a concept that's a name I'm using to refer to the concept. Because it is a different type universe than the normal parameter.
But this is the first time we're introducing that concept in transaction APIs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So conceptually, we are, I think, agreement that we need this API, so we just can talk about naming now. Is that fair, or is there any other?
Well,
alternative
so there's also the question of when you get back this type object from, let's just go with the current name, make generic method parameter signature type.
Yep.
How is it going to behave?
Yes.
Because
that's the next section.
Yeah. So I think that saying that the member info should throw is weird because then you can't test. Do I have one of these without writing a try catch?
Okay, we can definitely talk about that.
Yeah. So
if
somebody else is trying to write some reflections, stacking stuff on top of this.
Just give you a preview of that. What I proposed was kind of the minimum needed to enable this scenario. I do agree that there's a sliding scale where we want to make this more of a first-class concept, and so I do keep that in mind while deciding this thing, and that'll be covered below if you scroll down. But
let's not go there because that to me is almost like the next step of the design.
Yes, it is the next step.
I think the only other alternative would be that we don't use type, and I think that would be
then we
worse.
need a different
get
method.
Right. Basically, you would need something like almost like a union that say type or generic reference.
Yeah.
Which would be unfortunate.
That would be worse.
Yes.
So I think the only sensible thing is that it's something derived from system.type.
Yeah.
And then there's a method that creates one of those, so we need to agree on what the name is.
Right.
And the type that it doesn't itself even need to be public.
And then the type doesn't have to be public, but you need to agree on what the behavior is.
Yes.
And maybe there's a query API on type that tells you, are you one of those? Right.
Sure.
Maybe these are the only two.
We can add that. We could add that. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. I just want somebody to be able to detect them without a catch statement.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one here is we already have an existing API that is kind of similar to that, right?
We do.
Well, we have I'm thinking make
Generic argument or whatever.
We don't have an API like that. Maybe ref init does, but
Yeah, I actually searched for it. I didn't find anything. So.
There's some make API today. Make. So yeah, we have those guys. Make array type, make byref type, make generic type, make counter type. So make generic type is actually instantiating a generic.
Right. It doesn't make generic types.
Yeah, the name is fantastic.
Yeah.
So then we would need something like. Yeah, like I think the name as you proposed it seems a bit long.
I agree.
Like I would like to have something that's a bit short. I mean.
Also, I wonder whether, because now it says it's a parameter to a generic method.
Generic parameter
And I wonder whether we can come up with a name that basically says it's a unbound generic.
Well, because you would need to.
It's basically.
I guess that's fair.
Not be, specifically it's about the method.
Will we ever use it for classes? So
we might want to extend it to use it for classes for completeness.
Yeah.
There's also things that we could do, like if it ever becomes important to like search for overloads on like custom modifiers, then this would be the natural place to introduce a modified type, which is a type with a custom modifier attached to it.
Like
signature type is actually kind of
these are both
the same type.
They're both position 1, but they're different. This is class
different
position
types,
1,
right.
and this is method position.
Yes.
Okay, so this is
it's bank 0 and
bank 0.
Well, except I wonder, do you care?
Well, I mean,
Well, yeah, we do.
No. Don't care about the distinction because it basically you just need to pass an array of 2 instances.
Well,
of basically unbound type.
Oh, you can.
the language spec allows both of these as long as T and U aren't the same.
No, they can be even the same.
Yeah.
We collapse that stuff.
Yeah. So you need to be able to identify these differently. So this one is the class or the method positional, or the method parameter came first, and this one is the class parameter came first. Granted, if you're looking for one of these, you probably already have the type, so you could ask him for his generic type parameter sub 0.
Right.
So this one you could get the object off of.
There isn't a usability problem that needs to be solved there.
Boom.
Yeah.
But
I see.
But there is a difference if you're writing some sort of generic thing on top of once we start adding this. There's a difference between an unbound positional 0 from a method and an unbound positional 0 from a type.
So we should have the method in there.
So we need to know where it's being bound, where you think you're binding it to later.
Can I see? Go back to the code. What do I do in this case? What do I pass as those 2 parameters?
So you would say type of full bracket dot get generic parameter 0. That would be your T, and then you would say type dot make generic whatever for argument 0 for the method.
So for one, I use this new method. For one, I use just make generic. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Not make generic,
Just get generic parameter.
Get generic parameter.
Yeah.
Not great, but I mean, like the problem is you can't cook probably could make the other one work too, but like it seems almost nobody cares.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I could imagine, this becomes commonplace and people will want the other one for consistency.
Right.
Which is fine. It's not a major, and we could provide that. That's not hard.
Which one is the new method? The second one, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing that you can't make right now.
Yeah.
This you could get because you have something you're calling GetMethod on, so you could have asked him for his GTP.
You're not proposing to actually create this. We would.
That's already there.
No,
That's already there.
Well, yeah, okay.
It's not part of the
It's actually an array. Whatever. Get generic arguments and then
Yeah, sure.
fair enough.
conversation for the future.
Get.
I can make an extension method that calls the array. Like,
That's why I asked. Are you proposing something you're not?
No.
Okay, good.
that's the get generic type parameter was a method in the script sharp compiler. I don't remember the way that .NET wrote it in reflection. So.
Yeah, in a sense, the one that we introduce is a reference. The one that we already have is a definition, unfortunately. So like there's where this thing kind of bleeds in reflection that we pretend they're the same and they're really not.
Yep.
But I think there's nothing that we can do in reflection that would not result in much more API service to make that consistent.
Yeah.
Again?
The problem is reflection doesn't have the concept of a reference to a type. It only has
Fair enough.
Yeah. So like what you pass on the left-hand side is the definition of the generic type, which doesn't, I think, even exist in IL for that. Oh, I guess it does because it has a name. But like on the right-hand side, you just pass in the reference to generic type, which is just the, the position of the generic parameters of the method, because you can't actually get to the definition yet, because you're trying to bind to it in the first place. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, modular naming, I think it's a reasonable, like it seems the least invasive way to do this.
So why do we start the name with make? Because of the precedence? Saying there are
all our other type factories are called make something.
Because in other places we just call it create. We would call it
Creator. Are they even singletons, or are they like they're not cached, right? They all create a new object every single time.
Right now, I say that's implementation detail. I don't plan to cache it.
So technically here, because what we're really introducing is actually a reference and not actually the type, it could be make generic method parameter reference.
Or could it be just
making an implicit
to
reference to method type 2?
I would I would honestly not introduce the concept of a type reference in the first place because we don't have it anywhere else in reflection. Like this, you basically lie here a bit, but that's like
make generic method parameter seems like adding a reference wouldn't add too much value.
Okay, I mean, like, I just make generic method parameter.
That's acceptable.
To me, it feels like it's more for like code DOM or anything else that's building things of like I'm either adding a new one of these to a method that I'm about to like dynamically build, or I'm adding one of these, and I can't tell.
That's on the reference space. So
no name is kind of
fine.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's not going to explain the whole concept.
It's fine. I just feel like it's missing a noun.
Yeah, like, just keep in mind we have make generic type, which is neither one of those.
That's fine. So yeah,
in that sense, I think they're all
okay.
Right. So then let me just paste this in somewhere. Lose it, and then what's the original proposal? Yeah. What was the other one? I see.
Public static. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't apples and oranges in email.
I'm really good with apples and oranges.
Since we allow implicit things, that's a private instance. Yeah.
And those, what did we say? Instead of genericity, we said
generic parameter count, I think, is what matches the existing API.
Yeah.
So then you would, if you had a method info, you could take its .generic parameter count and pass it into generic parameter count.
Yeah.
right. So then those captures what we have said so far. Now let's talk about the other interesting.
But you missed, I think, one of the methods over there. The
get method info on the
I think we'll be able to infer it.
Yeah.
Well, and people infer and then infer something else.
Yeah, we're not that good. But
This type really has that get generic arguments not count, but whatever.
Would be this guy, right? All right. So I think this is everything we have said so far.
Approved.
Now we still need to talk about the other fun tidbit here, which is what semantics do we give the type. So basically what Eddie now has to do, right? He has to create essentially a derivative of system.type that represents those positional references. Now the question is, when you call methods on this guy, what does it do? Does it blow up? Does it return no ops? What happens when you call get members on that guy, right?
I see.
Or what happens when you say, I don't know, declared method, right? That's clearly now we already said that. But I don't know. What do we do for existing stuff? Like what do our generic type?
Well, that's not. Why don't we go through my list here?
Can the type be constrained, or is the constraint recorded? So when I
No.
why not?
Well, methods can't be overloaded by constraints. So
Not yet.
well, if that happens, then we can extend this, but there's no need to address that right now.
I mean, unless you think that C# 7.1 or C# 8 is going to introduce.
Whatever. I'm not thinking that. I'm just saying, since we are talking about the model, like what methods should be callable, to me, like mental model of this thing is basically is the constraint. So if it's not constrained, it's system object.
Well, I think, let's say, if we ever have to support overloading based on constraint, and I think the method we just introduced would have to get an overload that basically allows you to specify the constraint you're looking for, and then we expose the constraint.
But today the constraint is basically don't care because it's not it's not a disambiguate.
It's additional information. It's not decision maker.
And I think in IL, the constraint is effectively just a type, right?
Type plus one of the special constraints.
And again, we do the same thing.
The constructor. And
so if C# adds overloading based on constraints, because there are times that I've wished that I could overload just based on class versus struct. But if they do add that, then we'll just have to come back, and this will get the I don't care binding for constraint, and then the next overload of But then we'd have to come up with a way of encoding the word struct as the constraint. So.
Is there really a C# restriction, or I thought it was more of a metadata runtime restriction?
So let's. I'm not proposing that we do it, and I don't think that we will actually do it. But for the mental model, I'm thinking that the T kind of has the methods that you would get if you it has the properties.
Okay, the short version is I am making everything that I can make pro not supported, not supported, just to preserve our future options. I kind of listed below the ones that I actually need to work for this to be workable.
So what are the things that
it's to work? Scroll back a little bit. It starts. There we go. Type members implemented by signature types. You went through this whole list here.
Yes.
So anything that's not here, I'm just proposing it just throws.
So basically, like a query properties you want to implement, and then make to create to add modifiers, basically.
Yeah, right.
So what do our existing generic parameters do? They do the same thing, I suppose, right?
No, they do all kinds of fun things. Typically, you can even call get methods on them, and then they basically call get methods based on their constraints and all kinds of weird shit.
But they're actualized.
These are actual definitions, so they can do that.
References.
Sorry, when you say T, essentially like capital T dot get methods, it will call get methods on let's say the list of T
on its constraints. Basically acts as if the constraints are its base class, and it works accordingly.
So I see. So when you're literally looking at list of T, like the actual generic type, then it would basically give you the members of object. Then I suppose. Right.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Okay, I guess that works.
Somebody, I guess, finds it useful. I don't know.
Probably just because they called
it was just implemented that way.
I could believe it was just.
That's what I was saying. If the T is unconstrained, you did methods or object. That's what you can call.
Yeah.
If you create an instance.
Is type definition returns true?
No.
So but I don't. Yeah. So I don't think that the signature types or whatever we're calling them, I don't think those would get constraints.
No.
Because the constraints apply to the I can't remember the language. The language difference between the parameter and the argument. But one of them has a constraint and the other one doesn't.
Right.
The constraint applies to candidates, not to positions.
Yeah.
When you're looking for a method that has.
Yeah.
And then if we did allow overloading based on constraint, then fine, you'd say T2 and we give it a base class input. So you'd say make a positional one
whose base class was positional 0, so that would give you the U:(T).
I'm not sure, but it can also be a static method, correct? Or additional parameter, and it's constrained in the method signature, not on the type signature. In the type.
Right. So again, so I really think if we added constraint overloading, we could change the GetMethod signature type. So yeah. So my only concern about however this thing gets implemented, I have to go, is that somebody be able to detect it without an exception.
Okay. All right.
So whether that's we add, I think that there's some big enum list of what kind of special type thing am I dealing with. Yeah. So whether it's we add a new special type flag or we add the behavior that this looks exactly.
Although we don't have a precedent for that,
except it returns null for its method binding or whatever.
Okay.
Don't we have type of a type?
We do, but it's an internal type, so you can't really talk about it in an app.
But that seems like
it'll be public.
If you make it public,
anyway, so my only care is that somebody can detect one of these without an exception.
Isn't that basically a variant of this thing here?
Is generic param. I'm sorry. What?
So the API Jeremy just proposed, like query API.
Yeah, we could add another is predicate.
Like it would be like is generic method.
Like, that's
positional.
Well, I think what he wanted was a way to distinguish. You know, is this a resolve type or is this a signature type?
Yes.
Which is we could either define a public interface that all these implement or something. I don't know. But now that's right. Now, is generic method parameter, that is potentially a useful thing to add, but it's not. I'm just saying it's not what Jeremy was. I don't believe that's what Jeremy was talking about.
What would it be then?
Jeremy just wanted a way to be able to distinguish: is this a regular type or is this one of these newfangled types?
Because what you just wrote is basically you've got the method. Now you can say, give me generic parameters, and these things will be generic parameter types.
Now, is generic method parameter that is a useful API addition, even for like regular types, because you shouldn't have to like allocate a method info just to tell which flavor it is.
Yeah, that's
I think we're talking about what I'm saying. Like
that's
so when you look at the method generic parameters today, like when you already have the methods or something, method info, you're gonna get all the types. We should not change those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you're saying that the name is generic method parameter, would be better reserved for this concept.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Not for this new concept that is different.
Yeah.
This is what I had in mind. So if you call this guy will give you no true.
Right.
Yeah, but I think we should reserve this property name for the other conceect.
You mean the definition?
Oh no, why? Why?
Because that's what it is.
Exactly.
I got a generic method.
But we're redefining is array and is byref, all that stuff to work on these guys as well. I mean, we have to make it. We have to make those work in order to make this.
No. So here's a distinguishment. Like if I kind of use this make generic method parameter for getting some method info, when I then inspect the method info, I'm gonna get different type for the parameter, right?
Sure, you'll get a different type object back.
Which doesn't hold anywhere else. Whenever I ask for something, method, I can then compare and they are exactly the same. So that's a new thing.
That is yes, that is fair enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we have been heading, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're making the distinction of what you pass in to get.
So we are really introducing the signature type or reference type. Like honestly, we are doing that. Yeah. It's gonna.
I would call it signature. Reference type to me means something a little bit different. It means the thing that we try to introduce it, not that for what we're now. Signature.
Let's call it signature type. Yeah. Whatever.
Signature type is subtly different. So
yeah. So I think this one today will return true for both. The T in this example as well as the U.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have the definition.
Yeah. We have method info. Yeah.
Yes.
They solved this little bug.
So I mean, I think the only thing that we could do is instead of calling it this, we could say is generic parameter. We really wanted to differentiate.
So then we should call the method make generic parameter reference, which maybe is actually good.
I guess.
Adi, are you okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
We changed the method to make
Well, the only thing is that we're not also adding things like is array reference or stuff like that. Even though, if you take that thing, if you take the U and then call make array type in it, what you get back is a signature type that's going to answer true to is array. That's my proposal. And
so basically, you are saying that we don't need to distinguish between the resulting array and the.
That's right. We're not doing that for all the other flavors, so it would seem odd to do it for this, make that distinction for this one. I think what Jeremy just wanted was a way to distinguish between just the classic type and the signature type, just in general, regardless of what type flavor it is. I think I believe that's what he was asking for.
No, I think the high order bit was we will now. So basically, the problem is if I get the generic parameter from the actual method object,
right,
I can call get members and it will succeed.
Right.
If I do make generic method parameter, then I cannot do this.
That's correct.
So how do I know upfront what I can do?
Fair enough.
And so one way
you want to know which type universe it came from.
Well, I mean that's one way to do it. But the other thing is to say is this a is this a reference or is this a definition essentially?
I mean, I'm just saying we already have two type universes in Coursera. There's regular types and there's ref-emit types, and they have they're a whole different type universe. And I don't know if there's a predicate. I guess there's dynamic maybe. I don't remember if we have a predicate for that.
So I think there is a more generic property and just call it is type reference.
Mm-hmm.
Is type reference would mean it's a fake type. Don't try to do anything with it.
I would prefer to call it is signature type because if type reference to me means ECMA type reference. So
yeah, the reason I don't like reference in general is that it implies there's a result somewhere, right?
Yeah,
which we don't have.
Right.
You cannot go from it.
Well, the get method is kind of a result, right? You're now gonna get the method and it's gonna actually have those parameters that are kind of resolved.
Right, but it's the point is, to me, type reference means something that you represent in ECMA with a MDT type reference.
The high level point, I agree that reference is so overloaded. It's kind of
reference already has a meaning in ECMA.
Exactly.
It's not this one. So signature type, it's kind of what it's kind of the closest nomenclature I can get.
I see. But the general, we can talk about the name, but the general concept I now started to like. Instead of having many different queries, is it a signature array? This is signature. It's is it a signature type? And then you call some other method like is array to find whether it's a signature array or a signature not array and so on and so on.
Right.
So the is signature type is basically is it one of those types that you cannot do anything with?
And if you want to add that predicate to the surface area, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Would you transitively, if it's array of signature type, would you call it as well signature type?
Yeah, because it'll have the same restriction.
Would return basically true for is array and true for this new property.
Signature type, yeah.
What if you do list of that thingy?
List of what?
List of T.
And then you get what?
Well, it's like make array, right? I can do as well instantiations over those things, right? Yeah, I can.
Yes.
You create a type.
Yes.
List of T type.
Yeah. So it's still would return.
It's not a signature type.
No. Yes, it is.
Because does it mean contains somewhere in there a signature type, or is it the signature type itself?
The way I see it is that signature types have all these restrictions that most of the methods throw non-supported. That's kind of the practical upshot. And the part of the proposal is that if you take a regular type and make generic type, and one of the parameters you pass to make generic types is a signature type, then what you get back is a signature type that's a generic instantiation. So it is viral in that way. Now, what is that your question?
So I don't think so. It's viral, right? Because you can on list of bang 0, you can call what are your methods and stuff. You don't have to throw. Unlike on the bang 0, and the same for array of bang 0, right?
Well, I mean, we could, but I just don't. I mean, I don't see.
I believe that making it viral is gonna be actually harder to implement.
What is this?
Actually, no, it's easier to implement.
What is this?
We probably won't sponge it. I've already implemented.
I think in your example cannot have the T. I think you have to raise the T.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Type of list of T signature is false. That would be false. Well, we can't.
That's what I was.
You mean type of list of bracket, right? You can't actually say type of list of C sharp. Yeah, got it.
Okay, no,
That would be false. Yeah, that would be false.
Okay, that's what I was saying. So it's a different. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah. So what do we want to say? Yes.
That's false. No.
That would be false.
Yeah,
That's
So why do we? Why? Okay.
Okay, so this is.
Because it's not a signature. It's an open
zero.
generic
Okay.
type.
We were calling that this would return true.
So what does the bang
Why
bang
is
zero?
there a difference? Like array of something and list of
In
something.
your scope, what does bang bang zero refer to?
Yeah, I want to.
That's the same thing.
Okay, right. So if you, but what you're saying, hold on. So what you're saying is type of list bracket colon make generic type and then pass it in one of these signature types.
Yeah.
For that, what you would get back is something that would return true for its signature type.
Why? So if I make out of the signature type a list, I get false.
Right.
But when I make array of it, I get true.
No.
Okay.
I said it would. If you call type of list, dot make.
No, yeah.
Make generic type and then pass it in type dot make generic parameter whatever. You will get back a signature type. It will return true for its signature type.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And this would return true as well.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So it's really viral and stuff.
Yes.
So technically speaking, when I look at it, like we're basically asking, like, is it open generic? Is there some open generic variable?
That's a separate
Except
concept.
that,
It's a very separate concept.
well, this is similar, very similar to that, right?
It's viral in the same way, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Open generic type you can start closing and actually then end up with a close type and instantiate it. This one you cannot ever. You cannot do anything like.
Yeah.
You cannot ever
It's only useful as a search pattern in the get method. Yes.
Okay, fair.
But what I'm saying is this property that we are about to add, it basically means it's one of those types. You cannot close it, and you cannot ever get an instance of it. Basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's of this other type universe.
Fair enough.
Okay.
And
Page.
its signature type doesn't ring like this is the good name for me.
Okay, what would
But
you
I don't
like
know.
as a good name?
So I think we only have two options. Like option number one is you make this property very specific to what this method produces.
Yeah.
That's one option. The other option is we generalize the concept into something that we can explain. And I mean, like, if we go with the latter, then I think we need to convey the fact that these are essentially like synthetic types, right?
Yeah.
Like open, like
Just like ref-emit is a different type universe, this is a third type universe.
or partially constructed type, whatever you want to call them, right?
Can we tell if something is from the ref-emit universe or not?
I'm
Actually,
not sure. Maybe there's
nothing. So
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
and remember, third parties can create all the type universes they want. So it's.
Jay?
Oh yeah.
Framework, yes. No, not core, but yeah.
Ooh. Oh yeah. No, type delegator is kind of a semi-universe on its own. So.
And there's like two people in the world that have successfully done this. One is Eddie, and the other one works in BS.
Yeah. So I mean, really, if you want to predicate these, it's predicate. If you want to predicate these, I mean, really, instead of adding method predicates, it probably should be just expose a class, abstract class signature types that all signature types derive from, and you can do class checks because that's really what we're
you
doing.
would have to then like create, generic type and everything, like.
Well, it'd be just an additional type that lies between system.type and all of our internal signature type implementations.
Sure, but because you want to say like true on those things, then you would have to have list of this type.
I have to have it anyway. I have to have those anyway. However I implement those, I have to have a way to represent signature types that are just generic parameters, signature types that are arrays of those, byrefs of those, pointers of those, generic instances of those, and just up to any level of composition. So I already have to have that in my implementation. Well, I have them. It's
all right. Yeah, you have it like.
I already did reflection on core RT.
Okay. Every single method.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm fine with its signature type. It doesn't ring like super
As in,
well,
like,
but since you are the expert and you like
the
it,
type itself, like exposed as an abstract signature type. So
like this property is signature type.
Um,
Returns true for
so
all
property
types.
or the
I'm more partial to a class because it's it makes it just more extensible. Also, we could then make generic method parameter a static on signature type instead of type, which arguably is a little more natural.
Sorry, I'm confused. Like, what are you proposing? Like that?
Actually expose system.signature type as a new first class type, which inherits from type.
Signature type. And make it public, and now all the methods are there, and if you don't ever...
That way, if you need to tell the difference, you just do a cast, you do an is signature type to tell the difference. Yeah. To me, that's more natural. That's a more natural.
You capture really the type hierarchy instead of having, yet another is property.
Yeah.
But then, so my concern would be, we don't do it for other subtypes of types.
I was going to say, like, we don't do it anywhere else.
We didn't do it for ref-emit, yeah.
I think the only reason we did it for ref-emit was because we needed to add new APIs. Like basically, like because you start with the assembly builder, then you define the type, then you define a model, you define.
Yeah,
the type.
That's right. We have type builder and stuff like that. Those are public types.
No, but we don't expose publicly subtypes of system type.
No, we do.
We do. Type builder is a subclass of type, and it's public.
And this is other thing you may have heard of, Type.Info, which we kind of like dropped on the floor. But yeah, generally speaking, it's true. Like as in. Like we don't want to do this for basically for generics, for example, or for pointers. So we don't have the pointer type, we don't have the array type, right? We just give you query arguments on the type.
Basically, you distinguish between them. You always deal with system type. In most cases, mainline scenarios, you deal with system type, and then you query properties.
Type shape, yeah. Type shape we did via properties, but type implementations or type universes we do via subclasses. That's just how Reflection did it.
This feels more like type universe.
Oh yeah, it is a type universe. Yeah.
So
I guess that's
would go into the class subclass.
But this feels to me like an area like, are we doing a service or a disservice if we make this public? Hard to tell.
What you mean the subtype?
Yeah. Because I think in ref-emit it kind of serves a purpose because. First of all, you have the builder suffix, and you have actual net new APIs on those guys.
Mm-hmm. And I would say ref-emit is almost like it's a reflection-related feature, but it's very different.
Yes.
This one, it is reflection. Like if you want to kind of walk the hierarchy of types, you will have to use those new APIs. You will have to create instances of this type, and it would be nice if it's...
So the different universe is kind of implementation-ish detail. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. It's leaky, though. I mean, like I said, it is these signature types are very restricted in functionality, and as Jeremy says, it's you kind of want to be able to know that up front.
And so we definitely need the property.
Yeah, either property or type hierarchy. That's what we're discussing. Okay. We need to expose that. We just don't know right now how, right?
Sure.
Are you going to use is as like prefix or as a keyword?
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
Right. Yeah.
So I think like if we ever end up with like exposing, for example, other concepts like overloading based on constraints, for example, then at some point I can see this being something that we want to extend more. And then maybe that's where type hierarchy would make sense.
Yeah, I think it's more future-proof.
But then we can because
we can still do it.
Just expose the type. This property would still work. I mean, it's it's not that true. We are screwed.
Yeah, I mean, given that this is kind of like a scenario that not many people will use frequently, it's probably okay if it's minimalistic and API surface, unless there's more features that we need to give API surface for. So I would almost say let's go for property and let's not make the type public for now, and then let's see where this leads.
Okay.
So that still begs the question, like name. So you say is signature type?
Yep. That sounds reasonable.
And
let's try to wrap it up. We're spending more than 1 hour on this one.
Yeah, I did say this was a big one.
Jeez, listen, how good triage.
Yeah. That was an interesting discussion.
It's very interesting.
I'm curious what people will say on the recording.
I wouldn't call it triage, though.
Yeah.
Well,
other patients have already died.
You mean the APIs?
No, they haven't died. It's just that we haven't resolved them yet.
Yeah.
I'll try to find some easy ones after this one. I think my heart hurts a little bit. So
expose query API that identifies
We have implementation.
Positional
Like that.
parameters. We propose.
I'd probably say new signature types because it's not just.
Yeah, makes sense. We propose to go with something more. Generic is a bad word here. Foundational content that could equally apply to references to generic type in the spec above. Used the term signature type. So public static, not
virtual
bool. I guess it's
is signature type. Yeah.
Signature. What would that do by default? I guess it would be
20 Pro not supported.
Is it not supported?
We could return false, I guess.
Yeah, since we don't have ability to create signature types yet, then it should just return false.
That's fine. I can live with that.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So now, since the property is called a signature type, would it be better for the name that makes one of those to imply?
I think it was just the length that was objected to.
Yeah, we can. I mean, what would we call it then? Make
signature parameter.
Okay, how do we differentiate between methods and types then?
We don't need to because we don't ever need to create signature types.
We might want to extend it in the future. I think we ought to not close that off.
Then we call it make generic signature parameter for type. I don't know.
No.
Should we call it make generic signature type instead of parameter? Or make signature type? Let's play with just make signature type.
But it's int position, which means it ties already to kind of generic parameters, right? And in
generic parameters are types in our system. That's already true today.
It could just,
it's just,
it's ugly as heck, yes.
There's no name that's both short and capture it.
This doesn't read well. It's make generic signature. What's generic signature?
It
basically reads make parameter for generic signature.
I mean, that's okay. I think the generic method parameters are okay. I mean,
that's fine. Yeah. It's okay. Make generic parameter. Sounds good.
I mean, the only other interpretation is ref-emit, but ref-emit has its own type space, so I don't think there's a confusion.
So make generic parameter. We're fine with that name.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was easy. Okay. API approved, ready for review.
Okay.
Good. I feel so much better. I mean, 2 issues so far.
Ooh, 3.
Byref-like.
Is it easy?
This should be easy.
Okay. You got 5 minutes.
Yeah. What did you say? We approved the attribute.
Yeah, we approved it.
We actually, so we already approved it because we were blocked on C# finishing their stuff, and they did that. So if you scroll down, I remember looking at this one.
So
now there you go.
Have we already decided the name for this concept being byref-like?
So that's what I'm saying. I think
we are basically now in this meeting.
We've introduced the attribute by that name, so that decision seems to have been made.
So
we call it byref-like everywhere. So
can somebody look what the attribute name is?
I want to say
make sure the attribute is called something.
Mikhail pasted it.
It's actually over down there at the bottom.
It was called is byref-like.
Byref type. No, shit. Oh, yeah, at the bottom. Is ref-like attribute.
I would say that's not it. That's not the one.
I have to say, I saw
At the bottom, you have it like system runtime comparser is ref-like attribute.
Yeah. So then I would go with that name too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's ref-like instead of it's byref-like.
Okay. That's what we called it.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
I
think there's too much.
Can we check to see what the actual code says? I don't want to trust this.
I'm just checking.
I don't see it showing up in the index, but I'm going to go.
Yeah. Ah.
We have it is byref-like attribute.
So what do we name it?
Is byref-like attribute.
Yep.
Okay, so we did call it as byref then. All right.
I'm gonna edit.
You should dismiss the by on this.
Align this with the attribute we approved earlier, which is named is byref-like. It's byref-like, so that's exactly the same. Send the proposal. Matches that. It's approved as proposed. This was actually easy.
Yep.
Do you have it pending, or should I mark it as up for grabs?
What?
Do you already have implementation pending?
Oh, yeah.
Or?
All I can do is add it to the contract.
Sure.
Right. Checking for file exists, directory exists is not efficient.
Can we jump to the last reflection, and we have Ati here, unless he wants to. Like, you're late for your lunch anyway.
Yeah, but
It's actually at the end, probably somewhere. Assign to Ati. So look at the science field.
there it is.
Is it fast?
Yeah, let's. Or if it's not fast, then we can defer it. I mean, I don't care, but it's. So.
Well, it turns out they already have a grab bag of stuff on binding flags. Yes, that seems not like a terrible idea, actually. Thank God we fucked the binding flag, so we haven't more.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not in love, but so.
What is it?
So when you invoke a method,
Yes. I read the problem. I agree.
so doing it via binding flags. You already have to specify it anyway.
It's weird, but
Binding flags is already weird.
I'm saying it's weird because to me binding flags is about a selection of a
Definitely
of a member, not about.
It's also
behavior.
it's also about coercing arguments invoke.
Yes.
It also controls that.
Or binding flags does have the concept of invocation burned into it because you have like things like get value or like.
Also, you could say that wrapping in the thing that throws target invocation exception is a kind of binding, and it's not going to bind that way.
What you said.
You probably can spin it in many ways.
Well, either that or you have 900 new overloads.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't say that I don't like it, because maybe that is the right trade.
Okay. Beautiful.
The last thing reflection needs is more overloads.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Do we think the concept is good?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. People want to just kill the target invocation.
Target invocation.
I remember once. But this is how I learned about lightweight code, Jeff. I did that just to work around that in a personal project of mine. It's just
Do we
pissing me off.
Do we now need query APIs to be able to tell which of those method infos I'm calling? The one that will throw the target invocation exception or the original exception?
What?
I'm saying now we need a property on member info says does throw original exception.
No.
So you know what the behavior will be when you call invoke on this thing.
No. You specify it.
That's the term.
Yeah, it's not on the member. It's like
Call side. It's a call side option, not a.
Also,
Okay. I'm now feel much better. So we're not gonna. You cannot like do get members and pass binding flag to give me a member that then when I invoke. Okay, that's nuts.
reflection is fucked, but not quite that bad. Reflection of concern.
Okay, fine, whatever.
I actually like the terminology pass exceptions too. Any other concerns with that name? I think the name no fucking target invocation exceptions is probably not possible.
Yeah.
Kill target.
And when this option,
wrap exceptions that you have to.
But the problem is the default has to be to wrap.
Yes. So you need to.
Because I'm deeply against.
Well, unwrap sounds like you're wrapping and then we're unwrapping.
Yeah.
No, I think pass exception is great. I like it.
Okay.
Anybody else concerns?
Skip wrapping exceptions. Avoid wrapping exceptions.
Well, pass exceptions seems like it's more general. Do we have any other wrapping?
I mean, to me, pass exceptions means don't need exceptions, kind of like try-get, right?
I wonder whether or not we should make it specific to target invocation or not.
Well, this instance is only for target invocation, right? Because I don't think we wrap it in anything else.
That's why
I don't think there are any other place where
you take my point that one could read that and think that it's implying that without that flag, you have like a try pass or try get functionality where it doesn't throw at all.
Yeah,
well, it may still throw, right?
I know, but if I say pass exceptions no, I don't expect to get an exception.
No, it just means if you pass exceptions, it means you would expect to throw, right?
You get the uncensored exception, but yeah, I mean,
I'm sending pass exceptions to false. I don't expect to get anything thrown.
Yeah, people may understand. People may understand it that it doesn't pass exception.
Oh,
you don't really set it to false, though. I mean, it's an OR mask, so I mean,
people may expect that if you don't OR with it, it's not gonna pass exceptions.
I read the code and I see another place they didn't pass exceptions. They're like, oh, I guess this one isn't gonna throw.
Forward exceptions then? If you don't forward exceptions, then that doesn't mean that you don't get no exceptions. It just means
don't wrap exceptions.
No wrap. Yeah, no wrap.
Target invocation. That's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what we want to call it.
Not as it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Or just no target invocation exception. I don't know.
What if the original API throws target invocation exception?
Is ORing with the negated flag out of the question because it's too unusable?
Because then you would. Well, we can make it the default, right?
We can just call it unwrap exception.
The problem is
because it won't be wrapping. It will not be first.
So how would you get the other guy if it's not a positive?
Good.
So did we pick a name?
Don't wrap exceptions.
Do not wrap.
The problem is I've had so many issues in my career with negatives. Like, and then you negate, and pretty soon you have no understanding mentally. I mean, it's just
good issue identified. What is the solution to it? What do you propose?
Well, that's why I was being slightly facetious, but I think avoid wrapping to me doesn't count as a negative in my brain.
So it's sometimes gonna wrap. It's just gonna try to avoid doing it.
Like, do not means to me that I have to negate it in my brain. It's maybe I'm odd.
I think code bases we read like this, right? You say binding flags public or binding flags do not wrap exceptions, right? I think that actually does a really good job telling you what is happening, right?
Avoid the do not is still the same.
I mean,
you will never do it with public, right? Because you're calling invoke. You already have member.
I guess that is actually a good point.
Would you ever test the flag?
Invoke member is, I think, the one where you pass. Yeah. Invoke member is the big one that does binding and invocation and all in one package. That's where that's the scenario where you combine those flags.
Would you ever test the flag?
Oh, that means if I call the the get value method, there's no binding flags overload, right? That means I now have to do binding and invocation in one step to get that behavior? Because that would suck.
Get value where? Get value.
Like property info, right? When I do get value.
There is. There's a get value that takes a binding flag.
Yeah, when you call, like, for example, the one on method base.
I see.
You're never gonna pass anything else, correct? The binding flags. What do people pass today when you already have a member?
Either exact binding or nothing, I think.
If there's an overload that just takes an object, right? They probably do that one.
Yeah, it's true. In order to take advantage of it, they have to call the more complicated overload, which does suck. But you have to. I don't know how you'd avoid that.
I mean, arguably, if we go back in time, you might want to use the struct with parameters pattern like we do for ProcessStartInfo. You know what I'm talking about? Instead of millions.
What is the culture?
Like you basically give a struct in one.
Yeah, not an options bag. Yeah.
By the way, what is the culture info for in the method base that invoke?
I'm sorry.
Culture info.
It gets passed to the binder, which can do whatever it wants for coercing parameters.
Oh, it's just
coercing like base
for like custom binder. I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Jeez. Why is it not just a property binder?
Well, thank God we don't pass in an innumerable of environment variables. I mean, come on.
I wonder how many people use the culture info one.
Yeah. I mean, is there... Let me just do a quick search here. If I can actually fucking find this thing. Let's say property info. Right? That's the most. And there's the method get value. So here we have get value of object, get value of object, object array, and then the full one. That kind of does suck. Can I pass in null for the binder?
Yeah.
That's the same as calling get object.
It's the same as passing in type.default binder.
Okay, so then basically I could pass in null, and then I only have to specify the binding flags. That's not terrible.
Well, it's not very readable when you read the code. Null.
Nor discoverable. You don't know that you can.
I guess.
Yeah, the other alternative is to add overloads.
We should start without overloads and then see.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, like overload seems like a terrible idea, especially because the whole thing is virtual, right? Like that's not great.
Hmm. And when you write get value today, you're pretty much going to match it one-to-one with catching and unwrapping target invoke exceptions, right? So, I don't know, are you saving a lot of effort? Like you've now got to write get value differently, but you save the catch. It's not as if you're doing this once.
No, it's actually more than that. Because think about it. Like if you catch target invocation exception, yes, I can stash out the original exception, but then I have to rethrow over overwriting the stack trace. So you have to do the right thing to throw
the thing. Filter.
So like that's nobody does that correctly, right?
Debugging. That's the other pitch.
Yes. It's like you basically catch an exception that shouldn't have been thrown in the first place. So I think, generally speaking, I think you do have a net saving if you want to do it correctly. I don't think it's terrible.
Always wrap exactly one exception. Like it never has no exception.
I mean, you can throw it directly, and there's no inner exception.
But that's.
You're a bad person when you do that. Like, you can do anything. What's on methods? We have method info for good measure. Nobody cares about events. That what? There's no invoke?
That's on method base.
Oh, I see. I'm like, I've invoked this thing before. And that will be the same. I pass in the instance, binding flags, null, and then that's not terrible. All right. Considering the base that we have to deal with.
So property info get value, the horrible one with the 5 parameters, has 50% usage on NetFX Compound Lab.
50?
50.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So I guess they're trying to pass binding flags. They don't care about the rest, and they're putting null or something. The others are all low though, so maybe that's kind of bonkers. Okay. I'm going to set value.
Right. So then Looks good. The only suggestion is rename sections to what the fuck does it even mean? Speechifying. Speechifying. Is that actually a word?
Yeah, it's a word.
I'm feeling like trolled by the spell checker. Right. Happy with that?
Okay. Yeah.
Then I think we can try to do one more.
We're having do not pain me deeply.
I think for booleans I would agree with you. I think for flags it's not as bad because the way you compose them.
I think for flags it is bad, but for this you're usually just storing them and passing them in, so you're not doing anything complicated. So.
Do you have this implemented as well?
No.
Do you want to mark it up for grabs?
I think he really wants to take this one on because
I think he wants to take action.
Well, I don't care too much about this one, so mark it up for grabs, but I'll probably be the one that grabs it in a couple of weeks anyway.
All people who use reflection rules thank you for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just think how good you'll feel.
In that case, when you come to your office, unassign it from yourself and mark it up for grabs and put there some notes. What are the next steps?
Yeah,
It's
okay.
simple, whatever
Sure.
estimation of cost.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Ati. Please don't file another for next week.
Well, don't have any plans.
Oh, skip that one.
Yeah,
This
we only
one.
have 5 minutes? I don't think so.
This one could be.
This one is quick though, right?
Yeah, except that it was not clear. Like
Talked to Jeremy yesterday. I don't think it's 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Okay, so next one.
Because this talks about allocations and a bunch of other stuff that is a bit more complicated to explain.
ProcessStartInfo.StandardInputEncoding.
That seems reasonable.
Be fairly
I
straightforward.
think their implementing path exists right now, by the way. So
Down there, it's easier.
We should talk about it, but I don't think we can do it in 3 minutes. That's basically what I'm
that's
saying.
fine. And they shouldn't check it in until they
Get free. So
Uh,
jump down. There's, it's.
well, it's first to read what is.
Oh, it's rewritten again down there.
Do our readers have the notion of an encoding?
Text readers, yes.
Yeah.
You can pass the text reader and then it will honor the encoding.
Yeah. But you cannot set it, correct?
When you instantiate the reader, you can.
Yeah, but like when I have a reader, like, you cannot
Once it starts
assign.
reading, I don't think you can set it.
How does it even work on console?
Um,
Because we have out, which is I think a text reader, right? So what happens when I override the output encoding and then I start writing to it? Do we change the instance?
what do you mean by overrides?
So I can specify the console output encoding, right? And then I can say, so let's say I set this to UTF-16, right? And now I say console.out.writeLine. Right? Did we change the out? Like how do we? Yeah, I think as written, it makes sense. It's just a question of like.
So I didn't parse the whole thing. So is the proposal to add an API to ProcessStartInfo that is like the console output encoding, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's only input. I would expect it to be input and output. Well, I guess output you can specify, right? Because it's up to the process to decide how they want to write it.
Well, the standard output encoding and standard error encoding already exist, right? This one doesn't exist.
Now I'm confused.
Okay, this is just
Second
to add
line.
the property to query what the standard input encoding is. Okay. Well, no,
it's setting as well.
So ProcessStartInfo class provides standard output encoding and standard error encoding to allow callers to override the encoding for those. This simply changes the encoding path to the stream reader object, which wraps the underlying process byte stream. To more naturally support talking to a process that uses different encoding than the current, we should. So I guess what they're saying is we should also add this one.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense now. So for some reason we didn't do it for input, we only did it for output. Sure. That makes sense.
If you go down, it's more explained.
But I'm still a bit confused. So there's already a way to specify those encodings.
But not input. Only output and error.
Yeah.
We're missing the input.
Oh. Okay.
He also points out that, as you guys know, the default encoding is different in core. So, meaning it's more useful than in the past to be able to choose the encoding.
Standard output encoding is
How it's UTF-8.
Yeah.
So it starts on input right, close.
Okay. I understand it now.
But really, I really hope that's not what you're supposed to do. It seems bad. But yeah. Yeah. Anybody have concerns with that? Otherwise,
Fine for consistency.
so we're 1 minute over, so I would say that's it. From the 18 issues.
You want to find another hour later in the week to keep the train going, or you want to just wait till Tuesday?
I would just, given that I don't think next week is another review, so we could just spend another 2 hours.
If you can do spend 2 hours. The rest is like smallish and yeah.
Well,
Let's not forget that we didn't do proper reviews since end of May or mid-June, something like that.
How many API approved? Sorry, how many API approved have we got right now?
Oh, I see. 40, 50, I would guess top 30 maybe.
$60. But we don't care, right? Because only of them are looking for. 20 of them are up for grabs, so we have realistically 40 that.
Probably all of them, almost all, could be marked up for grabs.
Probably. Yeah, I'll poke at that. I think that people got a little bit sloppy marking that.
I'm not sure how often people are picking things up unless they open them themselves anyway, so I don't know.
Actually, they are.
You think?
No.
Okay.
I would say that, especially we see one new contributor every week almost, or every 2 weeks, like now over summer, and people from time to time have time when they pick stuff. So.
Right. Then I don't know whether we lost Stephen in the interim. I assume the answer is no.
We're still here.
Perfect.
And he's listening. Oh man.
All right. Then thanks online, and then see you later.
See you next week. Bye.